The year is 1929. After decades of offering big sixes, Pierce Arrow wanted to offer an 8-cylinder for its prestigious buyers. Pierce Arrow was founded in 1865 under a different name, Heinz, Pierce, and Monshiner Company, which made household items, best known for their gilded bird cages. In 1872, George N. Pierce would buy the other two out, change the name to George N. Pierce Company, and would still build the household items, fading out the household items around 1896 when bicycles were added. Motorcycles would also appear. They would build their very first successful car in 1901 to separate the bike business from the car business. The car business would take a different name. They would change their name in 1908 to Pierce Arrow. Pierce Arrow was a high-end luxury car maker out of Buffalo, New York. They were hailed as one of the three P's of prestige. Packard and Peerless were the other two. Anyway, in 1929, Pierce Arrow would get an all-new 8-cylinder inline 8, which was very similar in design to the Studebaker's inline 8. It's believed that Studebaker cast the block for Pierce Arrow. For those that don't know, Studebaker bought Pierce Arrow in 1928. Myron Forbes, who was the general manager, organized a merger between Pierce Arrow and Studebaker. It was the type of merger where Pierce Arrow would largely be run as its own company. It also gave Pierce Arrow a dealership network to sell more cars. 1929 was the best year that Pierce Arrow ever had, selling 10,000 units. It's also important to point out that there were plans to build this 8-cylinder engine before Pierce Arrow merged with Studebaker. The only thing was Pierce Arrow could never build these engines because it didn't have the funds to do so. Merging with Studebaker gave them the capital to build these engines to run with the Joneses. They also built a V12 a few years later. Will be covered in another video. Some are put off by Studebaker's ownership of Pierce Arrow, but without Studebaker's involvement, we would not have the 8, the 12, or Pierce Arrow at all in the 1930s. Studebaker would own Pierce Arrow until Studebaker had financial problems of their own. Pierce Arrow was able to buy the rights back in 1933 for $1 million. So fun fact, Studebaker wasn't the only company floated to merge with Pierce Arrow. Earlier in the 1920s, there was talk of merging with Lafayette out in Indianapolis, Indiana, who made high-end cars. They had a V8, which Pierce Arrow was eyeing up, maybe using if they merged together. Nash would buy Lafayette in 1924, and ironically, Lafayette would become Nash's entry-level car. The engine was stout. Some say that this was the best 8 offered at this point in time, not counting the Duesenberg engine. The block and crankcase were cast as a single piece, fully balanced and machined crankshaft that rides 9 main bearings. Pistons are made of aluminum alloy, split skirt type, with 4 piston rings. It has crankcase ventilation, high pressure oil lubrication was fed by the gear pump to all main bearings, connecting rod bearings, camshaft bearings, timing chain sprocket, and valve lifters. Valves are inside the block, running right next to the pistons. 2 valves per cylinder, 1 intake, 1 exhaust. Intake and exhaust are on the same side of the engine. Introduced in 1929, 366 cubic inch displacement flathead inline 8, 5.9 liters. It was good for 125 horsepower, 3,200 RPM, estimated 210 pound-feet or 284 newton meters, around 1,800 RPM, with a bore of 3.5 inches and a stroke of 4.75 inches. Compression is 5-to-1, 9 main bearings. Gears, this engine was used 1929 through 1938. Ads would claim speeds of 85 miles per hour. In 1930, Pierce Arrow would offer a different model system. A models were the most expensive, B models were mid-range, and C models were the lowest price. Pierce Arrow also offered 2 more engine displacements to choose from. They went smaller. This was the new base engine, which powers the Model C using a smaller bore of 3.375 inches, which brought displacement to 340 cubic inch displacement, flathead 8, 5.6 liters. It was good for 115 horsepower at 3,000 RPM. Estimated 205 pound-feet or 277 newton meters at 1,800 RPM with a bore of 3.375 inches and a stroke of 4.75 inches. Compression was 5.07 to 1, 9 main bearings. This engine was only used for 1 year, 1930, and it was only found in the Model C. The 366 would become the middle option, powered the Model B cars. Pierce Arrow would also do a slight bore increase to 3.69 inches, bringing displacement to 385 cubic inch displacement. Flathead inline 8. 6.3 liters. It was good for anywhere between 132 to 150 horsepower, 3,200 RPM, estimated 250 pound-feet or 338 newton meters, around 1,800 RPM, with a bore of 3.69 inches and a stroke of 4.75 inches. Years this engine was used, 1930 through 1938. In 1933, Pierce Arrow would go to hydraulic lifters. Unfortunately, Pierce Arrow could never right the sinking ship, and they were gone by 1938. The Straight 8 was followed up by the Pierce Arrow V12. In 1932, both the 8 and the 12 were sold to Seagrave and would be used in fire trucks through the 1960s, but as they say, that's another engine episode for another day. All right, now it's time for Would You Rather. There are 2 scenarios today, and the very first one, all Pierce Arrow. But which one would you rather have? 1929 Pierce Arrow, or 1932 Pierce Arrow, or 1936 Pierce Arrow? I'm going to leave this here for a minute. If you need more time, feel free, pause the video. Also know that write-ins are welcome, so if your Pierce Arrow isn't there and it's powered by an 8-cylinder, feel free to write it in. On to the second scenario. In your opinion, who made the best straight 8? Outside the Duesenberg, of course, and we're not going to include the vertical Stutz engine because that's pretty much a carbon copy of the Duesenberg engine. But which one would you say is the best? Was it Hudson, Studebaker, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Packard, Pierce Arrow, Peerless, Hupmobile, Jordan, Nash, Continental, Buick, Chrysler, and I'm sure I'm missing a few. If I missed yours, please bring it to my attention in the comment section below. Now it's time for Name That Tune. First person to get both the name of the band and the song title correctly in the comment section will have their comment pinned to the top of it. Thank you all so much for coming out and watching this. If you'd like to get in touch with me, shoot me a comment in the comment section below. If you want to send me something more personable, send me an email at what_its_like@yahoo.com. If you want to be part of the conversation podcast once a month coming up in 2025, also shoot me an email at what_its_like@yahoo.com. Thanks again for everything, and until next time, toodaloo!